Welcome to the Introduction to English Literature A-Level at the John Roan. The questions we're going to answer in this PowerPoint are: what will I study at English Literature at A-Level? How will my work be marked? And what skills do I need to succeed, particularly compared to GCSE English Literature? So first of all, an overview of the text we'll study at A-Level. There's three sections to the exam: drama, prose and poetry. In drama, you'll study A Streetcar Named Desire and Hamlet. A Streetcar Named Desire will be covered in year 12 and Hamlet will be covered in year 13. Prose, you study two texts: The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde and Dracula by Bram Stoker. And in poetry, this collection of poems, an anthology called Poems of the Decade, and a selection of English romantic verse. So to give more detail about the drama component, as I say, you'll study A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams and Hamlet by William Shakespeare. This represents 30% of the qualification and will be assessed by a 2-hour, 15-minute open book exam. That's with clean copies, not notes. Section A will consist of Shakespeare's Hamlet, and the expectation is that you'll talk about AO5, which includes critical essays. I'll come back to the assessment objectives later. And section B is A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Prose represents 20% of the qualification and ends in a 1-hour, 15-minute open book exam. This exam will consist of one comparative essay from a choice of two questions, both about The Picture of Dorian Gray and comparing that to Dracula, and they'll be under the theme of the supernatural. The third component of the exam, as I've said, is poetry, and that was 30% of the total qualification. The exam for that is therefore 2 hours, 15 minutes, and again it's an open book exam but with clean copies. Section A, you will compare an unseen poem with a named poem from Poems of the Decade. That's a 30-mark question. And section B will be a comparative essay between a choice of two poems from romantic poetry anthology that you'll study in year 13. The final element of the exam that I haven't mentioned yet is coursework. This represents 20% of the total qualification, but unlike the previous three components, is not an exam. Instead, it's an essay between 2,500 and 3,000 words, and there's a lot more freedom with this component. You can choose any two texts to study, and on those chosen texts, you will write an extended essay on a question of your choice that you'll agree with your teacher. It's a 60-mark question. You'll receive some guidance in year 12 about which text and question to choose, and then complete most of the essay during year 13. That's internally marked but externally moderated, which means it'll be marked by your teacher, but some of those will be sent off to the exam board for moderation. And this is a real opportunity for independent learning and for you to explore your own interests within English literature. Unlike at GCSE, there are 5 assessment objectives in English literature. I'll go through them all individually now. So assessment objective 1 is to articulate informed, personal and creative responses to literary text using associated concepts and terminology and coherent, accurate written expression. What does this mean? Well, it's kind of an amalgamation of assessment objectives 1 and 2 at GCSE, in so much as it requires you to write fluently and convincingly about whatever text you're talking about, and also identify the terminology and any quotes you use to support your ideas as evidence. Assessment objective 2 is probably the biggest jump up from GCSE in some ways, because it's not only about identifying methods used by the writers and spotting techniques they've used, but generally being able to talk about the way in which meaning is shaped. Sometimes this will mean recognizing language features or structural features, but more generally recognizing your ability to engage with how the writer has created meaning within the text. Assessment objective 3 is the same at A-level as it is at GCSE, which is to demonstrate your understanding of the effect, significance and influence of context. At A-level, this means not just recognising historical context, but also looking at theoretical context and sometimes applying theories such as Marxism, feminism, psychoanalytic theory and other theories to the text you're studying, and generally trying to ground the way in which you study the text and write about the text in broader contextual factors. Another assessment objective which builds upon skills that are used at GCSE but is not specifically its own assessment objective at GCSE is exploring connections across text. This is used on all of the components apart from drama. In poetry, you'll be asked to write comparative essays between poems. Obviously, it's the central component of the coursework. And same with prose text, you'll be expected to write comparative essays, making connections between the text on those as well. The final assessment objective is something that will be totally new to people who've last studied English at GCSE, which is explore literary text informed by different interpretations. That means integrating engagement with critical sources into your writing. This is expected in the Shakespeare module, where you'll be given an anthology of critical essays to assist you with integrating it, and also in the coursework, where you'll be expected to research and engage with critics that you've found yourself. Okay, so to round off, just what skills do I need to succeed? Well, of course, all the same skills as you need to succeed at English GCSE, but perhaps a little bit more as well. A-level will challenge your independent learning and revision skills, most notably through the coursework, which is a largely unguided project that you'll only receive feedback on once, but also in your more sophisticated engagement with more challenging text. Collaborative learning will be used a lot more, and wider reading will be expected. Again, it's to support your coursework and your ability to include AO5 in your answers, but also just generally. The use of debate, argument, opinion, and critical thinking in class will be used a lot more than at GCSE. And due to the assessment objectives, the skills of making links and observing patterns are a lot more useful due to the inclusion of AO4 in the mark scheme than they were at GCSE.